everybody. I'm Matt Valley, and welcome to the Rock and Roll Research Podcast, where we share the super cool backstories and side gigs of the research and insights pros that you trust. Today's guest is Katie Macdonald, who's currently Enterprise Sales Director, and a mighty good one, I might add, at a really cool research technology company called Fuel Cycle. Now, if you're familiar with Fuel Cycle, which you probably are, you know that they have really innovative platforms for maintaining constant contact and connections with customers, prospects, and users. But you don't have to take my word for it. They are a top 50 grit innovator, a top 24 Quarks marketing qualitative research firm, and members of the Inc. 5000. So really, really cool company. Now, Katie did find her way to research, but she did so by way of a very interesting upbringing in small town Iowa. So being from Minnesota, I know all about that. So we'll get into that and much more on today's podcast. So welcome to the show, Katie.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here, Matt.
Yeah, super excited to have you. Very much so. So let's start out with research, and we'll get into the good stuff. So how'd you find your way into research in the first place?
Yeah, so originally I wanted to work in an ad agency. So I graduated with a degree in advertising and an emphasis in consumer behavior. I always found the psychology behind why we do, what we do interesting. Then I interned at an ad agency and was like, oh, never mind, that's not for me. Yeah, not it. So then I went into some weird tech sales job where I quickly, realized I love sales, but I have to be super passionate and into what I'm selling, or I can't do it. And so then eventually I was recruited by GutCheck to be a BDR. And I remember my first day, they were still pretty small. GutCheck has come, they're an amazing company, still love them today, made a lot of friends there, but I was employee 13. So on my first day, I walked in and it was just a empty office space with 13 card tables set up in a circle. And I was like, oh God, I think I made a mistake. But ended up working out, loved it, and have been in research ever since. And I feel like every job's been a nice little stepping stone into the next.
Yeah, cool. So a couple questions about that. So you said you studied advertising and consumer behavior, and that was at Iowa State, right?
Mm-hmm. And then I worked on in the ad department selling ads for the Iowa State Daily. So that was kind of
cool.
Really fun. Yeah.
Cool. Now I have to ask, because episode number 20 was with Dr. Douglas Gentile, who's a psychology professor at Iowa State. Did you have Doug at all as a professor while you were there?
I don't think so. Although it's been a while. So I remember Jay Newell and some of my key professors that I had multiple times, but I can't remember everyone.
Yeah, you know what? If you had them, you would remember. I would imagine. So all good. Okay, so GutCheck 2013. I remember working for other companies and just hearing how disruptive GutCheck was. It's like it almost seemed like it was becoming a verb, right? We're going to gut check it, kind of thing. So you must have been there for some of that explosive growth.
Yeah, it was really awesome. But when I started there, agile wasn't a word you were hearing. Everyone is agile now. I actually hate the word agile. I'm
not sure what it means anymore.
Yeah. But at the time, that wasn't really heard of. If a project didn't take a month and cost $50,000, it wasn't worth doing. And so trying to shift people's mindset into there is a easier, better way you can do some of this. I definitely think the bigger projects still, have a time and a place, but it was fun. It was fun to kind of disrupt the industry and change people's minds when it comes to research and how it should be done.
Yeah, cool. So what attracted you to Fuel Cycle?
Yeah, I really missed qualitative. And ironically, I sold against communities for the bulk of my career,
Yeah.
which is funny to me. But I also think just the landscape in general is changing. Like, yes, fresh sample is great, but I think having the ability to have that constant customer connection and tap in as often as needed, like on a whim, is really, really powerful. So that was kind of what initially led me here, and it's been fun. It's a truly amazing company, working on some really, really cool things.
Cool. Awesome. All right. So let's head back in time here. We're going back in time. And this story, what I remember from when we chatted this before is that it involves a house that is quite literally shaped like an owl. And so you showed me the picture, so I can vouch for that. A house that looks like an owl. So let's go back. Where you want to start with that one?
I had a very unique childhood. So maybe we talk about how we got to the owl house.
All right.
So my dad he's an artist. He's a wood carver. He carves like Santas and tree spirits out of cottonwood bark. So I grew up going to a lot of like Renaissance festivals and art shows and things like that.
Sure.
And when I was in first grade, he got on QVC and sold out like almost instantly. It was really cool to watch. And I think that kind of gave him the confidence to be like, oh, I want to do this full time. So then
And this was the Santas that he was selling on QVC?
He carved, I think it was like a tree spirit in a bobbin. I don't know if you know what a bobbin is. It's like an old wood spool.
Okay, got it.
You're like, okay. If you look it up, you can probably find it. But so we moved to Walnut, Iowa, super small town, like 800 people, small, and bought the owl house, which is shaped like an owl, painted bright yellow, couldn't miss it.
Yeah.
Pretty fun to be the new kid at school when you move into the owl house. So that was kind of a tea room / gift shop / artist studio. And then eventually they bought another restaurant downtown called Aunt Bee's Kitchen. And we really monopolized the eating out in Walnut, Iowa. I think it was like you go there, or Macdonald's was the only other one.
Yeah.
So yeah, grew up waiting tables and cooking and pretty much running a restaurant.
So the owl house was part residence and part commercial. Is that how that worked?
Yeah. So when we first moved there, we lived in the upstairs. So it was just 2 bedrooms. It was my parents' room and then me and my brothers. And then the downstairs was like the kitchen, tea room, shopping area. So that was weird and unfortunate. I had to get rid of all my pets because you can't have animals in a kitchen. So
Bummer. Okay, so you did you help out at all? I mean, I'm just thinking about what it would take to sell handmade carvings on QVC, right? All of a sudden it's just like hundreds, maybe thousands of orders. How does that production line get done?
yeah, I mean, he worked basically constantly for like a week. I was pretty small, so I didn't help out. He never taught me how to do it because he was scared I'd chop my fingers off, which is fair. I probably would have, but I just watched my little brother while he and my mom kind of put all that together. But it was a lot because you have to have, if you don't hit the mark, I think it was like 1,000 or 800 or something like that, you can't participate. So it's very stressful, but I got a cat out of all that babysitting. So.
Wow. I couldn't imagine carving 1,000 things. That's really something cool. But you decided, so you're doing the Ren fairs and you're waiting tables at the restaurant. You're doing all this stuff, right? And so this is kind of your reality. How do you transition from kind of that whole environment to, hey, now I'm going to school and I'm going to find a 9-to-5 job. And well, I mean, jobs aren't 9 to 5, but I'm going to find a corporate job, right? It feels like such totally different worlds.
Yeah, I think I think watching my parents like have their own business was really interesting, but it also scared me because it's very, it's not consistent. So I ended up swinging the complete opposite way. And I think that's why I liked advertising, because it's, or even consumer behavior, but it's, you can still be creative. There's still, it's not like engineering, not that engineering is not creative, but it just had more of that creative outlet. And then with sales, you can kind of have your own business. Like I treat my own, patch of business like my own business.
Right.
So it's kind of the best of both worlds.
Right.
And I definitely, after years of working in a kitchen and just smelling like French fries every day, was like, this is not, I cannot stay here and take this over. It is not in the cards for me. I got to get bigger.
Yeah, that's interesting. I never really thought about it that way, where if you've got a job in business development, I mean, you essentially own your accounts, right? You own your patch or your territory, but you do have a little bit of that safety net, right? With the company working for a company. Yeah, it makes sense. So is there, given the fact that you had kind of this unorthodox, say, upbringing, is there anything you learned from that experience that you have taken into corporate life?
Yeah. I mean, when I first started waiting tables, I was so shy, like couldn't speak to anyone, shy.
Right.
No strangers, hated it. Super introverted. And so I think I didn't really have a choice. So you kind of had to just work through it.
Yeah.
So that's definitely helped. Also listening, I feel like this sounds kind of cheesy, so just bear with me, but if you don't like talking, I realized very quickly, because I mean, small town restaurant, everyone wants to chit chat and you're like, oh gosh, I don't want to do this. But if you ask the right questions, you can just listen and then they'll talk about themselves. So I think that's really paid off in sales, or I don't even like sales. I like to think of it more of like consulting, because I'm not just going to sell you something that you don't need. I want to know what your problem is, what I can help you with, and you can't do that if you can't shut up and listen.
Yep.
And then also just general work ethic. I don't know if you've ever had an opportunity to work for your parents, that you learn very quickly you got to do it right the first time, or you're going to get up before school and go back to the restaurant and vacuum correctly because you're lazy about it.
You can't really punch out and say goodbye to your boss.
Oh no, and they will find you. Like, Dorothy did the same thing last week. You didn't make her come back. It's like, she's not my kid. So yeah, I think all of that kind of set the stage for a successful professional career.
Yeah, cool. That's really interesting. All right, so Fuel Cycle is, pretty disruptive company in this space. Really bringing technology to the fore, bringing new ideas and new solutions to the table. So I'm curious, in your time there, with that sort of around you, what do you see on the horizon for market research?
Yeah, I think a couple of things. So I think one, I feel like a new hot topic that is definitely going to pick up more is the democratization of research, and just empowering teams, who maybe aren't necessarily on the insights team, to take on some of those projects themselves. I'm sure you experience this all the time too, but insights people they're busy. Like they don't have any time. So if you can push some of that off to like the brand or the marketing or the product team, and have them be able to do that without being worried. I feel like there's still some hesitation that we're going to hand over the reins and they're going to present, a statistically significant sample size of 10 in a meeting or something.
Yeah.
But I think technology's come a long way. And so like Fuel Cycle has something called Ignition. And so it's all like leaning on automation and people, I think makes it really, really easy to make that a reality.
Yep.
Yeah. And then the other thing I was going to add is just, and I kind of alluded to this earlier, but I think the consumer landscape in general is changing. It was like something like 40% of Gen Z will cancel you if you like mess up. And not just like from a product standpoint, but from like a value standpoint. So politically, environmentally, like you have to be on your game. And so I think just the ability to have those quick insights at your fingertips is really, really important, especially as, I mean, they're the future. Not that everyone else isn't important, but I think that people are expecting more from brands. And so they're going to have to do more.
Yeah, definitely. Especially since like the notion of canceling anything is so much easier now. Like you want to cancel a subscription, you just do it. And you sign on with something else and then you move on. It feels like that whole process used to be so much more laborious, or such a bigger deal. But now I guess like with apps and everything, it's like it's hard for like 3 seconds and then it's like, oh, forget it, I'm out.
Yeah.
I'll try something else, right? And that kind of mindset flows into all of the relationships that people have with products and brands.
Yeah. And I think too, there's just more out there. Like before, you had your big players, and now there's a ton of smaller startups who are doing really, really good jobs and kind of breaking through the clutter. And so it's not, oh, this is my only option. Like these two, you have a ton of options if someone messes up. So
yeah, definitely.
See how people keep up with one another.
Yeah, cool. All right, so this is a podcast, right, Katie? So I don't know if you listen to other podcasts, but it doesn't have to be podcasts, just real general questions. So thinking about the media that you choose to consume for insight or inspiration or even enjoyment, what's on the list for you?
Yeah. Well, obviously I love the Rock and Roll Research podcast. Another podcast I'm really into is How I Built This.
Yeah.
I'm sure you've heard of it, but I think that's super interesting just to hear how people kind of got started. I think the Stitch Fix and the Spanx are probably my favorite, or the Wayfair. They were kind of using Google Analytics before anyone really knew what to do with it. I also love to read. I don't know, have you heard of the book Orbiting the Giant Hairball?
I have not.
Okay, that is usually the response I get, but it is one of my favorite books. I give it as a gift. I reread it often, but it's by the creative director at Hallmark.
Okay.
I think it's Gordon McKenzie, and it's a really unique book, but it's basically a bunch of short lessons that all come together at the end. But it's about how even the most innovative organizations can become just this giant, messy hairball of rules and traditions and systems based on what's worked in the past. And that really stifles creativity. And so how to survive in corporate America without getting sucked into that and still be creative, but recapture that energy and put it into a corporate environment. I don't know. It's really, really good. When I'm feeling uninspired, or again, give it as gifts sometimes as a hint that maybe we're turning into a hairball and we should look at this. But it's really, really good, really, really good book if you ever have a chance to check it out.
Yeah, I think I'll check that out. It sounds like it's a quick read, right?
Oh yeah. I mean, there's pictures, there's doodles,
yeah.
I think one chapter is one sentence and it's just Orville Wright didn't have a pilot's license or something like that. So it's very easy.
Yeah, I can really relate, having worked for some startups at various sizes. Once you kind of reach that level, I don't know, 50 million, somewhere like 50 to 100 million, somewhere in there, all of a sudden, you've got all of this new process and all these new platforms and all this stuff, right? And more things to do to get everything done. And now you can't just pick up the phone. Every support department has, a service level agreement, 24 hours, 40. So yeah, it can really get snarled really fast.
Yeah, I'm not good at, I'm can I just not go through that process and chat you?
I know.
One thing I miss about an office, just being able to walk over and tap someone on the shoulder.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. All right. So Katie, this is, once again, it's the Rock and Roll Research Podcast. So this is a question that I really want to know, right? Everything else is just a warm up because this is what I care about. And I have no idea what your answers are going to be because we have not talked music at all. So I'm really fascinated to learn. If you were stranded on a desert island, Katie, and you've got 3 records at your disposal of your choosing, entirely of your choosing, to keep you company for the rest of your days, what are they?
Okay, this is a very hard question. Just so you know, I feel like streaming has spoiled us so that you don't, I mean, rarely do I listen to an album like start to end anymore. So this took me a minute to think of, but I think my first one would be Alanis Morissette, Jagged Little Pill.
Oh, yes. Classic. I saw her this summer with my daughter. It was great. Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
And then I think my second would be the Hamilton soundtrack, just because it has a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
Hip hop, some ballads. And then my last one, I'm going to cheat a little bit.
Everyone's got to cheat on this question.
It's too hard. I'm like, can I burn a CD and have a mix? I would do the Farewell Yellow Brick Road set list, which is probably a CD somewhere. It's a Spotify playlist, but I'm like 70% sure you could probably buy it. But I think that would be my last one. I love Elton John. I would play The Bitch Is Back while I'm being rescued. It would be
awesome.
Just really, really fun. I also saw him in concert this summer and it was amazing if you get a chance to go.
Yeah, cool. Awesome. Fun choices for sure. Fun choices. Very good. Well, this has been a great chat, Katie. I love your story. And next time, maybe over a pint somewhere at a conference, we can dig into that a little bit more because I have more questions, but I really appreciate it. And certainly wish you all the best at Fuel Cycle. It's a really cool company doing awesome things. So I really appreciate your time. Let's stay in touch and rock and roll.
Awesome. I was like, I can't do it.
That's awesome.
I was going to. I was like, I can't. I was like, maybe a peace sign. That's all I got.